I guess we can set the ball rolling, and people will be joining us as we go along. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are joining us in this webinar. And we welcome you, which is part of the public consultation of the AU-EU Innovation Agenda. We know that the UN mantra is that we should leave no one behind. And it is against this background that, in collaboration with the DGRTD of the European Union, the True Forum has organized this webinar that has speakers from the European Union, speakers from the African Union, and other speakers, so that we, as True Forum stakeholders, appreciate what this innovation agenda, the EU-AU Innovation Agenda, is all about. I am Florence Nakaiwa. I am Deputy Executive Secretary at the True Forum Secretariat, in charge of planning, resource mobilization, and management. And without further ado, may I invite our host, who is Professor Adipala Ekwam, the Executive Secretary of True Forum, to welcome us and address us. If you can share Prof. Adipala's profile. Professor Adipala Ekwam is the Executive Secretary of the True Forum, Regional Universities Forum for Capacity Building in Agriculture. He is a graduate of Ohio State University and a very strong advocate of human capacity development in Africa. Professor Adipala, the floor is yours to welcome us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Florence. Distinguished participants, friends from near and far, ladies and gentlemen. It is my singular and humble honor on behalf of the Forum Network Universities to welcome you all to this consultation webinar. We thank you very, very much for your participation. Ladies and gentlemen, the AU-EU Innovation Agenda, as presented to the AU-EU Minister Summit in February 2022, now under public discussion, is a landmark, a milestone in the African Union, European Union partnerships. But most importantly, and of significant relevance to True Forum and the member universities, is that it moves higher education and innovation from the periphery and recognizes that development has to be underpinned by research and innovation, and that universities and research institutions are key players. The core mandate of the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is to strengthen research capacity in Africa, and this cannot be overemphasized. It is a pathway for equal partnership between Europe and Africa. As True Forum, we welcome the agenda as a long-term investment and opportunity for mutual collaboration between universities in Africa and those in Europe. We look forward to the initiatives that will be developed across continental academic and research programs on an equal footing. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to structural transformation and to continuous African-based scientific and technological capacity development that will move beyond just the talk and to collaboration and to farm applications. We believe that it will correct the imbalance evident through brain drain, structural inequalities, and unequal opportunities between African and European universities. Ladies and gentlemen, we at True Forum applaud the political and technical teams at both the African Union and the European Union for championing this long overdue agenda. In itself is a groundbreaking innovation that has dared to question the status quo and look towards a partnership that transcends the historical paradigm between the North and South. But, ladies and gentlemen, and importantly to Reform, it builds on a long relationship between Africa and Europe, and in the case of Reform, the umbilical cord with the agri-natural universities and research institutions. I urge universities in Africa and in Europe and elsewhere in their institutional capacities, and staff and students in their individual capacities to respond to the survey that has been shared. It is a rare opportunity that we have been given to take part and shape the trajectory of research and innovation, both in Africa and Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to hear your voices and perspective. To you all, I wish us all, from Europe, from Africa, and globally, fruitful deliberations. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is our Executive Secretary at the RUFORUM Secretariat here. And RUFORUM is a network of 146 universities in 38 countries on the African continent. I need to tell you that we have simultaneous translation for Arabic and French. If you see the globe down there on your screen, if you click it, you'll be able to see Arabic and French, where Arabic will be where the Chinese is if you click it. So there is translation for you. Without much ado, we now need to take the deep dive into the AU-EU Innovation Agenda. And this agenda is going to be jointly presented by two gentlemen. Next time it will be a lady, by two gentlemen. Mr. Jens Kogel is the Principal Policy Officer and at the European Union, Directorate General of Research and Development, the Africa Desk. He is no stranger to Africa. He worked as a team leader for health, nutrition, and resilience sector at the European Union delegation in Nigeria. He will be presenting it together with Mr. Lukovu Seke, who works at the Strategic Initiatives Division, Directorate of Technical Cooperation and Program Funding of the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, AUDA NEPAD, as it is commonly known. His areas of expertise are economics, science, technology, and innovation, as well as youth issues and human rights. So we welcome both speakers to give us a preview of what the agenda tells us. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I feel very honored, I must say, to be here in this webinar. And I promise I will not speak too much. I hope the slides will speak for themselves. Also in view of that, my colleague Lukovi has to catch a plane very soon. I'll try to be as concise as possible. I want to first maybe introduce a couple of words in terms of what the innovation agenda is and how it came together. You have probably heard about the high-level policy dialogue between the European Union and the African Union and the African Union member states, which is ongoing for a long time in the area of research and innovation. And this high-level policy dialogue decided in 2020 that we should try and elaborate such an innovation agenda. And this presentation is about the working document of the innovation agenda, as the agenda itself will still need to be adopted by the research and innovation ministers of the EU and of the African Union at the next meeting, at the next ministerial meeting, which is planned for the first quarter next year. And we want to make use of this time until then to really have a very, very exhaustive, so to speak, consultation process, where you all are invited to give your view on the agenda, and maybe also give some ideas about how this agenda could still be improved. Now, the presentation as such will be divided in a number of chapters, and we will talk about this. Just let me check. We will talk about this. Can you, by the way, can you see the slides?
Not yet. We see you speaking, but we don't see the slide. Could you please
Okay.
share your screen?
I will. Sorry for that. So share screen. Now, there we are. So, okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, please, but put
Okay.
it in slide mode,
Yes,
in presentation
yes.
mode.
Oops. Ah, okay, here we are. Very good. So let me come to the next slide without losing further time. So we spoke about, or I spoke about actually the content of this presentation. It's not as long as the various points here on this slide indicate. I will briefly talk about policy context, background, needs and gaps analysis. And then my colleague Lukovi will take over and will take it from the point 4, the objectives, till the very end of this presentation. Now, in terms of policy context, I think we have a very rich policy context, actually. As I said, the cooperation between the European Union and Africa is ongoing since a long time. And I think it was in 2007, the first time that the high-level policy dialogue came together. It was formalized in 2010. And from there, this cooperation moved, and we will talk about this in a couple of slides, moved into a very productive research and innovation cooperation. With regard to the policy background, of course, research and innovation, as we consider it, it should be an instrument also for economic growth and development, sustainable economic growth and development. We are not talking about any economic development. And this is very much in line with the many policy documents that are were either prepared at UN level, for example, the 2030 agenda and the 17 goals that need to be achieved by 2030, the African Union Agenda 2063, the Science, Technology and Innovation strategy, the African one, or 2024. We have the African Union Commission Digital Transformation Strategy 2020 to 2030. And then on the EU side, we have a couple of policy documents. Among others, they include the Comprehensive Strategy with Africa, our global approach to research and innovation, where we set a little bit the framework of multilateral cooperation in research and innovation. But also since February, the summit was also already mentioned, since February, we have the global, sorry, I'm missing the title now at the moment. The global, Jesus. Vincenzo, help me out, please. The global
gateway, global gateway. Yes.
Yeah, the global gateway strategy. Exactly. Sorry. I was missing that word. So the global strategy, gateway strategy, has an Africa package, and this Africa package includes the innovation agenda. And so you see the cooperation in research and innovation from February 2022. when the conclusions of the meetings of the summit were issued, very closely align the Research and Innovation Policy Corporation with the Economic Development Corporation, so to speak. And that is important. That is a very important element where we need to, which we need to have always in mind. And I think for us at the European side, it is a very positive development, because so far research and innovation was always considered as a self-standing area that has not necessarily much to do with economic development, for example, which is, when you look at the history of developed countries, which is completely wrong. There is a very, very strong connection between research and innovation and sustainable economic growth and development. And I would wish sometimes our political leaders would take better account of that. So, but in order to have sustainable economic development, and this is our commitment also, we need to invest in research and innovation. And we have done so jointly with our African partners. And we have, as it was decided in 2020, we have 4 priority areas of this cooperation in research and innovation. The first one is the public health area, where the European and developing countries clinical trials partnership initiative has been working also since 2002 or 2003, together with African partners. I think it was 16 African partner countries and 14 European Union member states that work together in this initiative. And the 3rd edition has now been launched. So far, the investment sums up to almost 1.4 billion euro, together with the current investment of with the investment of the current initiative. So there's a lot of money put into the systems on both sides. But of course, what needs to be strengthened is the transformation of this of these investments into tangible solutions. The second area is what we call the green transition. It includes, and there it becomes interesting for you, the food and nutrition security and agriculture partnership. It includes also the climate change and sustainable energy partnership. Those areas are a key to the research and innovation cooperation between both sides. We have here more than 300 projects jointly conducted, with an overall investment so far of more than 800 million euros. So also a very significant investment, but again, an area where the translation of research outcomes into tangible solutions needs to improve a lot. And this is one of the objectives of the innovation agenda. We have a new area, which we call innovation and technology. We have more than 10 joint projects launched since a couple of years. The investment is still, compared to the other 2, very moderate, but it still is an important area, as it has provided the foundations for the joint EU innovation agenda for this working document. And it relies, among others, on the previously conducted Africa-Europe Innovation Partnership pilot, which came to an end last year. It was a small project, but nevertheless very impactful, I think. Sorry for the word. And of course, the Enrich in Africa project, which is also a very important project. It has just established a couple of weeks ago, or has taken the decision to establish a permanent innovation hub in Cape Town in South Africa. And but this innovation hub will work for the entirety of Africa in principle. So if we have any really good ideas, brilliant ideas, innovations that you want to see being translated into outcomes, then I would suggest to get in contact with this Enrich in Africa project, because they could certainly help you to move on or to scale up, as people say. And of course, the 4th area is capacities for science. Now, capacities for science includes human development to a large extent, and the capacities of humans to interact and to work in the area of research and innovation, and to acquire the necessary skills. And this is one of the major foundations for research and innovation, of course. But what is also likewise important is probably the availability of internet connections, which is in a continent or on a continent of the size of Africa, also very important, because traveling all the time would require a lot of time. Therefore, for example, just as an example, internet connections are also very important and are definitely an element that need to be considered. So I'm coming to the next slide. Here you see on this slide a quote or reference to the 6th European Union African Union Summit and the final declaration. And here in this final declaration, really, maybe not for the first time, but certainly for the first time within the last couple of years, the research and innovation area with the joint innovation agenda has taken quite a foothold in this declaration, and it also demonstrates the commitment on the European side to work together with the African partners. By the way, it also means that on the European side, certainly, that what we want to do is we want to strengthen not only the cooperation between the EU and Africa, but also within the European Union. So to be able to align projects also at member state level with the European level projects, to really have joint forces working in this area, because we think the synergies that could be harvested from this cooperation, from this more broader cooperation, would mean a lot also for creating impact on the ground, if you like. And the same goes, of course, for the African countries. We would very much like to see, and we will keep encouraging African Union member states to see research and innovation not only as a self-standing area that has nothing to do with like the general health policies in the countries or economic development and trade and whatever, but to integrate research and innovation more actively in their sectoral plans, so to speak. So that was that so far. Now, one more slide that is also trying to demonstrate what we are aiming at with the innovation agenda, and in principle, I explained that already. So you have on the outside of these of this small circle of institutions and sectors, you have the various players of innovation chains. You can call it innovation value chains, if you like. And these actors, of course, there is already some cooperation ongoing. For example, the private sector is cooperating with higher learning institutions, universities, to some extent already. But also member states work together with the institutions at the African side or on the European side. And so there is already some cooperation ongoing, but we want to streamline this cooperation really, and we want to promote research and innovation, as I said before, to become more or to create more impact, and that is really what we are after with, and we will come to this point more strongly also in the next slides. The innovation agenda will be the tool, in our view at least, will be the tool to facilitate this cooperation and to also agree on a joint objective of such cooperation. And the joint objective of such cooperation can only be to create impact. That is what we want. Now, before you can create impact, you need to understand what are really the points that need to be addressed through an innovation agenda. We have identified in a working group that consisted of European Union, African Union officials and experts, It also included member state experts on both sides, of course, the European Union institutions, but also some African Union institutions. So we jointly looked into what is currently ongoing and where are the weaknesses in the cooperation so far. And we have done so, and we identified needs and gaps in principle 5 areas. In these 5 areas you see on the slide, it starts with the innovation ecosystem, which is a general framework of the system in which innovation takes place. And that includes, of course, research and innovation stakeholders, but it also includes governments, because they are providing, or they are representing the regulatory side of innovation, if you like. It includes other areas. It includes, for example, the financial side, the banks, if you like, those venture capitals that are part of the game, and also the private sectors, universities, and many others. So this is the entirety of the system. And the question about innovation management as a second area identified is more about how can I say, how to implement a management approach that would really lead to innovation being the key for translating research and innovation investments into such outcomes, into tangible outcomes, creating impact, and so on. So this is the innovation management, and it needs to transcend through all the areas and through all the institutions, everyone. So in the ideal case, when you wake up in the morning, your first idea will be innovation, and everyone needs to do that. Then we have a perfect innovation management. The third point is knowledge exchange, including technology transfer. Of course, that is also very important, because I think in some cases, we do not have really time to reinvent the wheel for the 500 times. It's not necessary. Think about climate change. Climate change is now progressing much, much faster than it was at least acknowledged 20 years ago. And it will have a huge impact on our future, on the future of humanity, if you like. And of course, that needs to be tailored in our future activities, and therefore also knowledge exchange about how to address climate change, for example, is extremely important, and that includes also technology transfer. By the way, the innovation agenda is not talking about European Union technologies being transferred to Africa. It can also be, and we are very open to that, transferring technology progress in Africa or made in Africa to Europe. So we'd like to see this joint idea of such technology transfer and whatever progress we can make, that this should be made jointly and in partnership, as it was mentioned before. The second last point here is the access to finance. This is a very important element. It's unfortunately missing to a large extent also in Europe. I have to say, we are not the strongest in the world. The North American venture capital market, for example, or the Asian venture capital market, both markets are much, much stronger in this regard. But it is an important element that we are currently missing. We are very aware of that. We are not completely missing it, but we could be much stronger in this regard. So what we are trying to do is we are creating this agenda, and we want to integrate also the financial stakeholders in this area. And that includes, in the first place, our big banks, the African Development Bank and the European Investment Bank, as the main source of funding. But it also includes the member states on both sides. It includes the large corporates on both sides that are also sometimes having programs to facilitate innovation uptake and the scale up of companies across Europe and Africa. So all of these players need to be integrated in our activities, in our future activities under the innovation agenda. And we are already in contact with those players and try to do our best in this regard. And then lastly, of course, the human capacity development part is also extremely important, an element that is sometimes not much integrated or not very well integrated. Again, we are trying to bring the stakeholders around the table that are necessary for such capacity development, and to ensure that we're not only allowing for technology transfer or for the scaling up of innovative businesses, but that we at the same time take care of the human capacity development that is necessary to provide those companies and those players in the markets with the necessary how can I say, with the necessary capacities, actually. So that is it from my side, more or less. Lukovi will probably continue on the objectives. I don't know whether you want me, Lukovi, to switch through the slides as you present.
Thank you, Jens. I can still give you some time to drink water. I can share on my side and proceed.
So yeah, I stopped my presentation, right?
I have another presentation on my side, the same.
Oh, okay.
As displayed. Much appreciated, Jens. So thank you very much once again, and apology for presenting from Maputo, because as you know, on the continent, we have a responsibility to track, to train countries to be able to track the level of investment.
Do you want to adjust your mic?
Hello, can you hear me? Let me can you hear me now? Is it okay now?
Better, thank you. Yes,
thank you very much. I was saying that apology for being busy presenting from the airport in Mozambique, because as you know, we have the responsibility to help countries to know how to track the level of investment they are putting in research, because since '98, that was our motto, but we are not making it in the current knowledge-based and innovation-led economy. And also to introduce, as I've been introduced, I need to bring to your attention as well that we have now a new Chief Executive Officer at the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, which is Her Excellency, Madame Nardos Bekele Thomas. And the plea was in the audience to make sure that we have more female who might also present. I have my colleague from the African Union Commission, Malet Teshome Kebede. So if the moderator can at least include her among the speakers. I'm going to take you through the remaining part of our slides. Is that as we are planning to implement the 10-year AU-EU innovation agenda, the intention here is that we need to have first an objective, and it has been flagged accordingly by Jens, saying that we need to strengthen the level of cooperation between the African Union and EU, and for us to cope with regard to the sustainable and inclusive growth, and also to create jobs. So now, for us to move on, we need to have some activity or actions. And it's very difficult for us to have those actions without having specific objectives. So, and as you could see here, focusing on the objectives, you will discover that a joint working group on the AU-EU high-level policy dialogue on STI took into consideration some aspects, especially previous activities on research and innovation, a result and lesson learned of the Africa-Europe Innovation Partnership Pilot Project, opinion from various groups, especially the key one, the AU-EU Advisory Group on Research and Innovation, and as well as discussions that took place at the previous ministerial conference, where ministers in charge of science, technology, and innovation from both space, especially the African Union and European Union, met. And finally, also to build this framework is that a pilot mapping has been done exercise to check our strengths and the threat as well for us to implement accordingly. So what is happening in terms of specific objective, as you could see, we need to translate innovative capability and capacity and achievement into tangible output. So these are, we need to make it real. So the second specific objective, we need to foster and strengthen innovation ecosystem on our continent. And that will also help us to enhance socioeconomic impact. And for that, we are willing to generate impact by design. The third one, we need to develop sustainable, long-lasting, and mutually beneficial higher education and research and innovation partnership. We need to avoid that relationship we had before independence, where it was not a win-win situation. So we need to be transparent, honest enough, allowing our players in Africa and Europe to work together on joint projects, because where we have competitive advantage in Africa or Europe, let us make sure that being in one globe, we can at least do something on Earth. That is the intention. So we'll at least strengthen people, community, and institution, and to make sure that scientists and being in the field of scientific and innovation, we change the way of seeing things. And the last one, we need to scale up instruments that can take forward existing successful program and projects. Okay, so we need private-public participation, transparency, and inclusion. Where public institutions cannot afford to have equipment, where public universities cannot afford to have equipment, they can team up with private universities in Europe and in Africa. So we need government where they can at least use this square kilometer as being a global agenda with dishes in South Africa. That we need that to benefit to all universities, all the countries in Africa and Europe. For that, we need to learn, monitor, and scale up things. Then, beyond that, as I was talking in terms of specific objectives, as we have now to implement, our implementation would be based on short-term actions. Cross-cutting aspects are there, public health issues are also there, green transition taken into account, innovation and technology well flagged, and also we have capacity for science. So because we have a limited time, I cannot be going through all those details. So by the time the slides are shared, you can just go deeper. And when we go through medium-term actions, still we have some cross-cutting aspects, public health issues, green transition, innovation and technology capacities for science. But let me take a bit here with regard to the public health issue in mid-term. So we need to vaccine, medicine, and health technology and production. What we are complaining now is that we are seeing that standard where African countries are not given enough vaccine to protect the population. So we don't know if by the mercy of the Almighty that citizens can cope, but we need to do this operation because being the African Union body and institution, our mandate is really to make sure that our member states are really benefiting from everything. And through this agenda, we believe that we have to work very well with our counterparts in Europe to make sure that we implement something that could be for the wellness of our communities. And then in terms of long-term action, you know, still we have the crossing, the public health issue, the green transition, innovation and technology, capacity for science. Here, let me touch a bit on capacity for science. We need to bridge research and innovation in fostering the emergence of center of excellence. So it's very important for us to focus on those. So if we go beyond now, in terms of ongoing the aspect of public consultation, I know that we have our expert with us here, and we'll prefer that he cover that aspect as well. But what we can tell you, we don't need this AU-EU innovation agenda is not under implementation yet. We have to consult all the stakeholders, and we believe the source of knowledge, university, we have three mandates: to teach, to train, and also to make sure that we do R&D. And beyond R&D, we have also advocacy on the ground. So through this consultation, through Roof Forum, we believe at least you can give us your feedback So as we speak, the document is still in English and the questionnaire is in English. And we are going to do our best to translate the master document in at least some of the AU languages. Our sister Melet Reshome, who's part of this meeting, made secure already the questionnaire in at least for the language we can use on the continent. That will help now our French-speaking officials and the stakeholder, Lusophone and Arabophone, to be able also to intervene to share the information at the same level. So this at least is something very important, and that's the reason of this meeting and gathering. So those there you can see some of the aspects, a picture showing the importance of us focusing more on the AU-EU innovation agenda. Then we'll ask a question, why are we not seeing research in this? You cannot see research because research is an innovation activity. So as long as we speak about an innovation agenda, research is already taken into account. So we have the main steps, okay, as you could see, I will not delay you much. So, and as we speak now, we are expecting that throughout 2022, we continue with the consultation. And by Q4 of this year, at least we can consolidate it. We can consolidate our input because there is no need to rush. If we have to make sure that we consider everything you can do, so we have to do so in a way that we converge and we remain very inclusive. So with those few information, we need to express a sincere gratitude to all of you. And as we are working, I'm speaking here on behalf of our team at the African Union Commission, even though I'm from the EU DA NEPAD, because the mandate we have is to drive the development agenda of the continent. But our sister institution in Addis Ababa, they are driving on their behalf, but we are one as a institution and will be working with the economic communities. So with those few words, I need really once again to express our sincere gratitude, especially our team, Jens and myself, Malet, and also Dr. Vincenzo for making sure that we have this gathering. Thank you very much, Ruforom, and Dr. Florence, thank you indeed for making sure that we have this meeting today.
Okay, thank you very much. You have heard it, and we do have a window for questions and answers. I noted that you have several projects that as outlined by Jens, and some of them are very many projects, others are very few projects, but I'm sure the audience has a lot of questions, and feel free to answer them online, but you can also take a few that you will then respond to. I'll just pick a few from the Q&A. Someone is asking, Gerald is asking, why has knowledge generation not been tagged? Knowledge generation and indigenous knowledge not been tagged as a gap. Both of you or even Malet can answer that question. There is also another question which you may wish to answer. Someone is asking, what mechanisms will be used to disburse the funds in the various thematic areas? How do these relate to existing EU funding mechanisms such as Horizon Europe? And another one is yet asking, how has the European Union planned to end a long but quiet process in which African researchers have been turned to data clerks by those from European institutions? I think let's take those and then we shall get to the next ones, next set of questions. So Yen, Lukovu, or Malet, please do respond.
Yes. Thank you very much, Laurence. That's very interesting. You need to remind me, obviously, of all the questions, but in terms of knowledge generation and what was the other keyword? Indigenous knowledge, exactly.
Knowledge, yes.
I think knowledge generation per se is part of research and innovation. Huh? Research and innovation do in principle nothing else than creating knowledge. Or generating knowledge, if you like. But of course, as we think about innovation value chains, this knowledge generation starts much earlier. And for example, education is also part, or should also be part of the innovation agenda, because you cannot have engineers, you cannot have doctors, you cannot have PhDs when they are not sufficiently educated. And educated, I mean school education. There we start already. And the innovation agenda is nothing but, I mean, we call it always a living document. And the reason why the innovation agenda was included in the summit discussions and deliberations in February is also that we want this agenda, and I use the word transcendent, that we want to use the agenda to transcend through all policy areas, because innovation is made in all places. It's not related to research and innovation as such, or to academic research and innovation. Innovation is made in all areas at all times. What we want to achieve with the innovation agenda, that everyone will feel being part of it. That would be, again, that would be an ideal situation, of course. And so what we want to see on the European side, but also on the African side, is that whenever it comes to, for example, budget discussions of annual budgets of governments, that research and innovation is more actively integrated in those budget discussions and not being treated as an appendix of such discussions. And that, but that also means research and innovation has a responsibility, right? We are responsible to translate the outcomes of our projects into, and I mentioned that before, into tangible outcomes. So therefore, I think this innovation agenda is very much about knowledge generation, and it includes indigenous knowledge. That is also very clear. Nobody is having anything against indigenous knowledge. Jesus Christ, sorry, it needs to come also from the stakeholders. Stakeholders, all of them have a very active role in this innovation agenda. Without you as stakeholders, nothing is going to happen. So you need to take it up, and you need to show us and to tell us what needs to be done in terms of using indigenous knowledge, or to translate that knowledge into, as I said, tangible outcomes. So that's from my side.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Malet's hand is up, and Lukovu, you may respond to some of the questions. Yes, please, Malet, go ahead, and Seke.
Malet can respond on my behalf, because I'll be boarding now. So thank you very much indeed. Malet, thank you for being there for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do have a nice flight, Lukovu.
Thank you.
Malet, please go ahead and respond to the question. Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And thank you really for being able to organize this important session. And thank you for including us in your panelists group as well. Do you see me? I have.
Yes, we can see you.
Yes. As my colleague Jens and Lukovi have also been elaborately explaining and eloquently handling the actual innovation agenda and its components, just to recall that the main objective of the agenda itself, we see that it is there to enhance innovative capabilities of both African and European research and development performers and innovators, be it in business enterprises, government sector, institutions of higher education, the civil society group, and so forth. And it is mainly to ensure that we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, mainly the 8th and 9th SDG goals, and contributing to our AU long-term agenda 2063 as well. So having recalled that essential drive behind the initiative of developing the agenda, I think Jens has also spoken of the 5 key areas that were identified as the gaps in the space, or in the field of the innovation spectrum. Amongst that, I think we have also said knowledge exchange and technology transfer are pronounced as the gaps. So when we speak of knowledge exchange, I believe there was a question that was posed with regards to indigenous knowledge systems and how indigenous knowledge systems would be utilized in this innovation agenda. We understand that the exchange itself is not just the mainstream knowledge as we identify it, but knowledge with regards to intellectual property that extends to indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge systems as well, because we in Africa are very conversant with utilizing our traditional knowledge systems, be it in medicine, be it in several aspects of our social and cultural life. So this knowledge exchange also encompasses indigenous knowledge systems, the utilization and in fact protection of indigenous knowledge systems and IP systems at large as well. So how do we ensure that technology transfer is also made equitably? This is also something that we have identified as a gap or where there is need to work more on. So I think this would be how the agenda wishes to address this elements per the questions addressed. I think Jens, you can step in case. Yeah.
There's just one that we would love you to respond to, which is AUC putting in resources as much as the EU is putting in? If you could respond to that, that would be great as well.
Right. Well, as at our level, you've heard from my colleague Lukovi the various initiatives that ODA-NEPAD has also dedicated to realize the objectives of the innovation agenda are met. Also at the political level, at the headquarters of the union, we have our science and technology ministers who would be presiding over endorsing this document itself. So at the highest body, we in fact also call on you as key stakeholders, as academicians, as network of universities to really speak to your political superiors based in each member states to ensure that enough allocation of resources are made from the member states themselves, because we do have time and time again member states coming together, ministers coming together, and really agreeing to put a certain level of their GDP to science, technology, and innovation. So we want to hold them accountable to that decision. And there have been several decisions from member states calling on political superiors to dedicate resources. So yes, we will have the upcoming Science, Technology, and Innovation Ministers meeting in June. So we would want the outcome of the consultations to also really clearly put in the voices of the stakeholder groups, which would be taken up further. I hope this addresses it.
Yes, thank you very much. Hakim, you will note that your question can be answered in the agenda itself. If you look at it, you'll be able to see how agriculture has been handled by the different projects. But Jens, I don't know whether you want to respond to how the mechanism that will be used to disburse the funds in the various thematic areas, and how does it relate to existing mechanisms such as Horizon Europe. When you finish that, we get into the next presentation. Thank you.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. Well, I think, of course, we will not do away with our existing mechanisms. That's very clear. Horizon Europe will continue as we had before with our Africa initiative in the work program 22 and 23. Under Horizon Europe, we will continue to have another Africa initiative, for example, for the work programs for the following work program, sorry. But this is not all of it. Huh? This is just an additional effort that we are making to ensure that a reasonable package of research topics is dedicated to Africa, and that also the colleagues who are generating the topics internally here in DGRTD that they always have in mind that we have the AU innovation agenda, and that this is that this will be implemented through particular actions under Horizon Europe. In addition, I must say that we have now, in the meantime, managed to have a very good cooperation with our colleagues in DG INPA. And also from DG INPA, there will be a stronger focus on research and innovation to ensure that research and innovation, as I said before, will also gain attractiveness in terms of cooperation between the EU and Africa. And that hopefully then there will also be mechanisms and a way to translate and scale up research outcomes into tangible solutions, as I mentioned before. But these instruments and programs are still under development. We are in the beginning of the innovation agenda. We should not forget that. And the agenda itself will certainly be implemented as soon, or will start being implemented as soon as possible. But we are also only human beings, so we need to follow step by step. But we're trying to do our best, of course. So I hope that answered the question, at least a bit.
Yes, thank you very much. That really does answer the question. And we notice that we are at the starting stage, at the initial stage of this innovation agenda, and we still have an opportunity to shape how it progresses. Dear participants, I want to let you know that the link to the public consultation survey questionnaire has been posted in the chats, and also the innovation agenda, the draft innovation agenda that is being consulted has also been posted. So please feel free to open it after this meeting to continue with the consultation, as it were. But now we have to switch gears because time is fast running. One of the projects that we have under this agenda that has been really ongoing for quite some time, so it will be building on what exists in the system, as it were, between the AU and the EU, is the Partnership on Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture. You know, we usually call it FNSSA without looking at the broader name, as it were, and the future perspectives in the context of the AU-EU Innovation Agenda. This presentation is going to be made by Dr. Vincenzo Lorusso, who is the Public Officer, Science, Technology and Innovation Cooperation with Africa and Bilateral Cooperation with Asia and ASEAN countries of the European Commission, of the Directorate of Research and Innovation of the European Commission. He is a honorary research fellow at the University of Salford in the United Kingdom. So please welcome Dr. Lorusso to give us his presentation on food and nutrition project security as one of the projects of the AU-EU partnership. Thank you very much. Please go ahead, Vincenzo.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. I'm going to start by trying to share my screen and then take it from there one step at a time, as Jens said, indeed. Can you please confirm you can see my slides?
If you put them in presentation mode, that would be great.
They are. Hopefully they will be also on your side as well.
Yes, they are right now in presentation mode. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous, et bon dia a todos, depending on the latitude and longitude of the African continent and Europe to a lot of extent that are connecting, that the audience is connecting from. My name is Vincenzo Lorusso. Indeed, I work as a policy officer in science, technology, and innovation cooperation with Africa, and also I deal with some of the bilateral cooperation with ASEAN countries. But before getting started into the content, as Dr. Florence justly said, I will try and provide an overview of the work that we are doing concertedly with our colleagues from the African Union and the African Union Commission on the projects that are falling within the Partnership on Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture, indeed known under the acronym of FNSSA, I thought I would spend a couple of words of big thanks to RuForum Network for the great help provided so far in facilitating, first of all, this fantastic event with simultaneous translation in several languages. Dr. Nakaiwa, my thanking words will not be enough, and certainly the distance doesn't help in these regards, but all gratitude to you and RuForum as a network, as a Pan-African, if I may call it like that, network for the advertisement and the quality of the webinar. That we are happy to participate with our African colleagues as well. And perhaps a little greetings to all of the colleagues that are connecting from some of the institutions that I had the pleasure to interact with over the past few years, including some, amongst others, Makerere University. I see there's some old friends I've been able to connect. So thank you for being here with us today indeed. So what I will try and present today is an overview of what we aim to do in the context of the AU Innovation Agenda for these projects that are within the partnership of food and nutrition, security and sustainable agriculture. I guess there is no need for me to say to stakeholders coming from RuForum Network Universities the huge importance of agriculture and rural development, I would say at global level, not just in the African continent context. Of course, in the case of Africa, where approximately 60% of the work-age population is engaged in agriculture, and importantly enough, at least 50% of them being women, agriculture and rural development are of major importance in a continent where the population is expected to really increase in numbers and reach 2.5 billion by 2050. But of course, this has also importance in the context of global value chains and global food supplies and security. And of course, the current situation with food security and supply threats coming out of the ongoing Ukraine crisis are even further highlighting the importance of working and investing in a sustainable and enduring way in food security. So with that being said, and this is also where we're coming from in terms of the big why we are dealing with this, and I guess that is an obvious point for colleagues and stakeholders, and hopefully also students attending today at this webinar from the RuForum network. I'm going to try and put this within the context of the AU Innovation Agenda, and from that introduce you to the mapping exercise, this work that we started doing approximately a year ago on the projects, the R&I, the research and innovation projects that were carried out within this partnership, in a way to really try and see what was the good generator of these projects under the 4 or 5 years funding cycle that they benefited from, and what can we do for these projects to turn into business and opportunity in terms of development and employment, importantly, in both Europe and Africa, of course. So the context of the AU Innovation Agenda, I guess you heard it all during the previous presentation by Jens, Mr. Högel, also by Lukovi and Malet, whom I thank and I greet for this opportunity. It is the outcome really of the first AU R&I ministerial meeting, which took place in July 2020. In a nutshell, this AU Innovation Agenda aims to be disruptive, and it is indeed very ambitious because it really is aiming to translate R&I endeavors into tangible businesses, services and jobs, and develop a long-term and sustainable operational AU and EU R&I cooperation model. I'm going to try and go hopefully very simple in my example. You know better than I do all these R&I projects that are of course very good and generating publications at the end of their funding cycle, but then they reach the end of their funding cycle, and for some whatever reasons, not all of them can really move to the next stage of development and turn into actual enduring employment opportunities to begin with for even the scientists or the postdoctoral students that engage in them. Well, the innovation agenda, amongst other things, aims to really address this point and being there and provide a sustainable tool for opportunities to be generated on the ground. So politically, as was said also by Jens and Lukovi and Malet, there's a strong mandate coming out of the AU Innovation Agenda. And that is the one that is also coming from the acknowledgement of the work of the agenda in the final declaration of the 6th EU-AU Summit, a joint vision for 2030. As you saw in one of the slides of the previous presentation, the agenda is acknowledged there as one of the tools to step up the scientific cooperation between the African and European content. And now from a policy and also funding instruments points of view, this initiative is a flagship, the AU Innovation Agenda is a flagship initiative of the bigger Global Gateway Africa-Europe Investment Package, which aims to boost smart, clean and secure links in digital, energy and transport, and strengthen health, education and research systems. which was indeed announced during the Africa-Europe Week in the mid of February, as was previously said by my colleagues. When it comes to the partnership, the EU partnerships in research and innovation in the area of food and nutrition security and sustainable agriculture, aka FNSSA, this is the longest running R&I partnership between the African Union and European Union. It was established in 2016, and of course, under the aegis of the high-level policy dialogue on science, technology, and innovation, as was mentioned previously by Jens and Lukovia as well, which is basically the policy platform where the priorities in terms of R&I cooperation are defined, and also where the policy, let's say, milestones are defined when it comes to this cooperation. So because this is the longest lived partnership in terms of R&I, we can also expect that the projects with the highest degree of maturity are in there. At least in terms of funding, you would find a significant number of projects that at least have reached completion. And therefore, it makes a lot of sense to really investigate and assess what good have they generated, what findings have they generated, and what could be done for these findings to turn into tangible development and employment opportunities. Now, when it comes to the actual figures in terms of funding, so this partnership has been generated around, as also Dr. Florence was mentioning, co-funding mechanisms coming from both the European Union and the African Union, amounting to a total of 710 million euros for the moment, for more than 300 projects as we speak. If you access this website, and of course we'll be sharing these presentations and we'll be sharing all these links, this is where the Leap for FNSSA, which is the platform that manages indeed these projects. And I take this opportunity also to greet the colleagues that are coming from this partnership network, that are some of whom are also connected online today. And thank you very much for your work in this area indeed. This is where you can find the updated list of projects from the very inception, from the very start of the partnership. So these projects are grouped in 4 different areas. You can see them in here. I'm not going to spend too much time in elaborating on them. Overall, you can see the title: Sustainable Intensification, Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition, Expansion and Improvement of Agricultural Trade and Markets, and 4 cross-cutting topics. So really everything across the food systems value chains, from the start, from the seeding, planting, up until the finished products and market access that is linked to them. In terms of overall geographical reach, this project has so far spanned 27 EU and 47 EU countries, and again with a large number of partners from the EU, over 800, nearly 900 EU institutions and institutes, and approximately 560 partners from the Africa group. So therefore, because of the wealth of projects and the strong history of this partnership, it was chosen, the FNSSA partnership, the Partnership of Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture, was indeed chosen for the pilot mapping exercise, which had 2 aims really. The number one that you can see here is the one of aiming to identify the most promising projects amongst the projects that were funded and concluded or had reached at least close to conclusion by the time that we started it, which means last year. Projects with 2 elements: the highest business and innovation potential. And in the next slides, I'm going to try to define these 2 assets that we were looking for in projects. And the number 2, at the same time, trying and identify the specific needs of the most promising projects that warrants being addressed for such projects to be able to lead to the next stage of development and turn into, again, business development and employment opportunities. So in order for this to happen, what we did was developing, first of all, a methodology, and we did so internally at the European Commission, of course, under 2 platforms, the FNSSA working group, including, of course, African Union member states and African Union Commission. And at the same time, we also did it in consultation with all the other DGs within European Commissions, and then also working with a consulting firm to some extent in the second half of the assessment. And of course, we did so under the second platform, which is the one that was mentioned earlier on, the high-level policy dialogue, updating the Bureau members on the progress of this evaluation from the start until the stage that we reach now. So what we had to do in the screening of these projects, we really had to see what uptakes, what findings have they generated so far. Looking also at positive externalities. There may be projects that have generated findings. Some of them are positive findings that were even unexpected. I'll give an example. Some seeds residues can, for instance, be used as poultry feeders. and therefore they can generate some further development opportunities and some further employment and create new business in terms of opportunities. The innovative nature is something that we also assessed of this project, and of course the scale up and commercialization, potential. And then again, on the second, as a second step, establish what type and degree of further support, also known as investment strategy, the identified most promising projects required in order again to be translated into concrete market and employment opportunities, and thus develop at a larger scale. So really this exercise, the way we called it, was a forward-looking exercise, and to make it differ really, to distinct it from a monitoring and evaluation exercise, which by nature is more looking back, and then of course drawing some conclusions indeed for forward perspective. In this case, we were looking at the business potential of readiness, the capacity of projects to generate results and updates and translate into business and development opportunities. Basically, is the project good, mature enough to deserve further investments? And then second point, what are the unmet needs of these projects for this project to really reach to the next stage of development? What does this project need to fully reap its potential and bring positive socioeconomic outcomes to scale? Now, of course, not only did we do so in consultation with stakeholders from the African Union member states and African Union Commissions and European Commission, and European Union member states, but also importantly enough, we did it so at the interface, a tight interface with project coordinators, with project managers, and of course the monitoring and evaluation teams from the FNSSA, Live for FNSSA partnership group. Perhaps a bit of a reality check. What do we mean by agricultural innovation here? Because perhaps we're using this word a lot, and certainly are we doing so in today's webinar. Well, I'm referring here to the FAO definition of agricultural innovation, is the process whereby individuals or organizations bring new or existing. And I'm trying to emphasize this aspect. Innovation is not necessarily bringing in a new product, a new methodology. Sometimes it's also using something already existing somewhere, perhaps in a new context or in a different manner, in a different way, and therefore generating innovative, positive outputs in that way. So it could be about products, it could be processes or ways of organizations used for the first time in a specific context in order to increase effectiveness, competitiveness, resilience to shocks or environmental sustainability, and thereby contribute to food security and nutrition, economic development, or sustainable natural resource management. So basically, novel ways to solve problems, to address issues, and therefore generate positive outcomes. So this is the process so far. This is what we've done in these terms of mapping. As you can see, we started from the screening at that time. When we started in March 2021, the project, the FNSSA projects database included 261 projects. So we screened them, and then we assessed which ones were mature enough, which ones were fitting the maturity criteria, that we had established. And then based on that, we evaluated them for the innovation and business potential. This was done during the so-called first stage of the assessment that you see in here. And from there, we moved between May and September 2021 into the second stage of qualitative assessments, which is when we define the KPIs, the key performance indicators, which based on which we assigned also a score, and based on which we could then establish a ranking of projects, a sort of pipeline of projects in the third stage of the work, which is the so-called quantitative assessment, which is basically we rank projects according to the scores, according to the 13 KPIs that we identify, and then we define a threshold above which we would consider projects to be the most performing one, the best performing ones, and there will be basically the focus of dedicated ad hoc investment. So as you can see in here, we started from 61 projects, and then we ended up at the end of the analysis, at least so far, with 34 projects, 14 of which were ranked as top performing ones, for all the reasons that I'm going to try and explain in the next slides. Now, the year 2022, as part, and of course, so will be the year 2023, is a busy year when we try to really establish the support strategy that will be fitting the exact needs of the projects in a way that can be as constructive as possible to make sure that they really make a step further towards the marketplace, towards delivering services or business, and therefore employment opportunities coherently, consistently to the agenda. And I mean, a lot of information, I'm aware, and apologies for that in here, but I'm going to try and show you why we decided to focus initially on 47 projects out of the 261 which were available at the time in March to 2021 in the Live for FNSSA project database. Basically, we were looking for projects that were completely co-owned in terms of funding, in terms of support by both the European Commission and the African Union Commission. We also wanted to have projects that were as applied in terms of research as possible, and importantly, and this perhaps was the main criteria, projects that are at a degree of maturity that enabled us to really look back and assess what they've done over the years, and also look forward and see what they needed to move indeed to the next stage of development. So basically, we chose projects that were either nearly finished or they were already finished, and several funding mechanisms behind them, quite diversified, and also a rather comprehensive inclusiveness, I would say, of subtopics of the 4 priority top areas of the FNSSA partnerships included in the projects that we selected. And this is an overview of the outcome of the first stage assessment of the appreciation of the 47 projects that we ended up selecting based on the innovation potential in here in different colors. And also here we categorize them according to the sectors from an agricultural point of view. As you can see, pretty broad definition, whether they consisted of agriculture and food systems value chains, whether they were more broadly speaking dedicated to agriculture. I acknowledge this is a broad definition, whether they were more specifically devoted to livestock keeping, whether they were linked to livestock keeping, but also food system value chains and therefore transformation. I'm referring, for instance, to milk processing projects, or whether they were then also referring to also focus on all the value chains. And this is a bit of a legend that we used in how to consider projects of an innovation degree from low to very high. We haven't got the time to go into details, but please bear in mind that in the definition of innovation that I provided earlier on, the one that of course is coded by and established by the FAO, we also took into account the concept of social innovation, which is not necessarily indeed represented by novel technology or products, but also by innovative methods of interventions that are actually bringing innovative and disruptive results in a given specific context. And this is the second stage of the exercise, when we define the key performance indicators, the KPIs, and you see them in here in terms of categories. So as you can see, 50%, well, the 50% of the weight of importance of them was assigned to the economic ones, those that measure the project's business readiness and potential and capacity to generate economic impact. 25% of them was, 25% of the weight of them was assigned to social KPIs, and then equally 25% of them, of the weight was assigned to the environmental ones. So the social KPIs are those that were used to measure projects' capacity to create a social impact, and the environmental KPIs were those that allowed us to measure also project impact on the environment, of course, in a climate resilience perspective. Overall, we came up with 13 KPIs, which you will find defined into the details and also in the nuances of scoring and the weighting that we assign to them in this next slide. So this is an overview of the KPIs of business and economic importance, inevitably revenue change, changing cost, changing productivity, new business opportunities, and patents, of course, intellectual property being extremely important to secure and deliver and secure innovation to the marketplace. Social KPIs listed in here, as you can see, impact on women, impact on youth, on poverty reduction, impact on food security being not only a public health issue, but also a public well-being issue, if I may say, opportunities for civil society involvement. And then the environmental KPIs listed also here, impact on climate change resilience, which is of course of major importance in certain areas more than others, I would suppose, resource efficiency and value chain shortening, extremely important, also within a regional context. And this is the outcome of the third stage of the analysis, when then, based on the score, as you can see in here, I would like to draw your attention on the right-hand side column of this table, where you see the score, which is linked to the degree according to which each KPI is expressed in a single project. So as you can see, we're moving from a score of 0 when a certain KPI is not found in a given project, to low that corresponds to a value of 1, medium 2, and high 3, and so on and so forth. So based on that, we did so for all the 34 projects for which you could have extensive. The reason why we moved from 47 to 34 is because eventually we could only have access to extensive interviews and contacts into details with project coordinators and managers on the ground for these 34. And please be assured that the 13 out of the 34 were not the most innovative ones whatsoever. And then we were able to establish the ranking of the projects, or aka the pipeline of projects, based on the overall scoring, based on the KPIs. And the top 14 projects that you see in here are those that are moving from map chicken up to above, indeed, in different colors that refer to the different funding bodies, the different sources of funding. And as you can see, overall, I like to say that there was a generally good performance recorded on economic and social KPIs. However, more mixed performances were recorded in environmental KPIs. But overall, I mean, this is something that to be kept into account in the overall picture when we're looking at the top performing ones. And in terms of countries that were involved in the top performing projects, and I trust and believe and hope that some of the project coordinators or the researchers, the scientists and stakeholders, and hopefully even farmers that were involved in these 14 and 34 overall projects are attending today's webinar. As you can see, they are involved in several African countries. Each project is most of the times running in at least 2 countries, and that's extremely important and I would say powerful of this FNSSA partnership, which of course allows to really connect this to the needs of developing value chains, and if not global, at least at regional level and interconnected ones, importantly enough. And as you can see, the representation of countries from west to east to Central and Southern Africa, Northern Africa, well, in this case, we've seen especially Sub-Saharan Africa among the top 14 projects in several countries being involved several times, like for instance, Uganda or Mozambique or Burkina Faso, and so on and so forth. These 14 projects also fit in each of the 4 priority areas of the FNSSA partnerships, from sustainable intensification to cross-cutting issues, and moving to passing by agriculture and food systems for nutrition and expansion and improvements of agricultural markets. Importantly, as you can see, the funding from which they benefited comes, as you can see, from both the African Union, like the AU Research Grants number 2, and the European Union, like funding support provided by the European Commission DG INPA, indeed, that was also referred to by Jens earlier, and the ERANET co-fund LIPAGRI as well. A very quick, I promise I'll bring this to an end very quickly, a very quick overview of what these projects are about. I mean, what are we talking about in terms of projects? Because I mean, I just show you their titles or their acronyms so far. The first one we will start about DUA Cassava, which aims overall to mitigate the impact of cassava disease and drought in Malawi and Tanzania, to create opportunities in the cassava value chains and overall ultimately increase food security in the region. When it comes to the business and development outcomes, as you can see in our analysis, we were very much results oriented in as quantitative as possible way, because of course it's important to assign numbers to things and trying to establish how much good has this project brought on the ground. So as you can see, in this case, we had results quantified as 3.2% increase in farmers' resilience to drought, 20% increase in farmers' income. These numbers are quite significant to us. Reduced environmental footprints, and then 17% increase in feed manufactured profits, and 25% decrease in chicken mortality. The Cassava project is an example where positive externalities can be found across several sectors within agriculture. So now in this case, the residues of cassava seeds were actually used for chicken feeding, and therefore they were creating not only a business opportunity within the poultry value chain, but also an empowering opportunity, because you know better than I do that a lot of the time backyard poultry is actually very much linked to women's farmers in the African settings. The next project will be about crop and soil health improvement, which overall aim to increase agricultural productivity in West Africa and create new agribusiness opportunities and value chains. In terms of outcomes, what have we recorded so far? A range, I know rather broad, between 20 to 80% increase in local agricultural productivities and 34 to 40% increase in farmers' revenue. So when possible, we try and quantify the findings as much as possible. I'm not going to go through all these details for all the projects. We haven't got the time for that, but there's the link in this presentation. I'm going to put in the chat to the final report on this study, so you can have all this information available. And of course, we'll be more than happy to try and answer any questions that there may be following this webinar as well on the specific aspects of this assessment. It's saying on the project on education and training for sustainable agriculture. As you can see, topics were pretty wide and diverse. In this case, as you can see, we were less able to quantify the increasing outputs recorded as overall outcome in the project's results and assessment. So we tried our best. Sometimes it wasn't as easy as straightforward to put a number to the improvement that was recorded on the ground. And certainly COVID and the slowdown that were caused by COVID certainly didn't help in trying to really get a more let's say quantitative feel of the results in all cases. Projects on plantain, as you can see, and then projects on several crops, other non-wood forest products in Angola and South Tome and Principe, and then also projects on aquaculture, a sector that is certainly of great importance and emerging in the African context. In this case, was project coordinator from Makerere University. I take the opportunity to greet Dr. Jessica and all the colleagues from Makerere University involved, and also the Ghanaian colleagues involved in this project, which aims to overall decrease the 60% of the mortality in tilapia fish and 20%, an increase of 20% the tilapia fish output. These figures are yet to be further confirmed by the colleagues. Africa Milk, another project linked to milk value chains and milk transformation. I guess no need in this venue to stress out the importance of such a value chain. Importantly, the last few slides on the needs that were recorded for the top performing projects. What do they need? What kind of support do they need to make it to the marketplace and turn into business and development opportunities? Perhaps not surprisingly, the vast majority of them, in more than 80% of the cases, would require some further financial support. But I guess that is no surprise. Business assistance, nearly 70% of them, they do need business assistance. Business assistance being overall business development. So how to really set up a business, how to support in being in entrepreneurship, support in creating a business and developing and get access to the market. Another need that came out in at least 20% of cases is IP advice and management. What if I come up with an innovative idea? How can I secure it from the intellectual property point of view? And then how can I be sure that once I bring something to the market, it's going to be our own, meaning our company's trademark, and it's not going to be infringing any other intellectual property, or it's not going to be copied by any other generic product as well. Technology transfer or technology sharing is also something important. If some of these projects, for instance, in the case of the tilapia fish product in aquaculture, aiming to develop cocktails of phages to improve disease controlling fish, how can they be then scaled up in a way that could be really commercialized, the new phages that have been produced in a pilot fashion in this project? What kind of industrial support can we bring to these projects? Institutional support, and this is very much linked to the regulatory framework support, were recorded in approximately in slightly less than 10% of cases, and partnerships development, which I guess is always an important aspect, very much linked to development of value chains. Not necessarily a business can take care of the entire value chains of transformation of a given project or a given product. There could be also synergies and collaborations established at different steps across industries and across companies. So here you find the links to the full reports available in the full database where it is available, and the full database of the FNSSA RNA projects is also put in there in terms of links. This is the last slide. What is the way forward here? We're currently working very much so on the immediate next step to be possibly taken by each of the top performing projects, but also overall the 34 projects to move towards scale. So we'll be working also closely with project coordinators in trying to identify, if they had support, what they would be now that the project is finished, what would be the immediate next step that it will be taking. We have assessed several needs. As you can see, some of them are shared across projects, from finance to IP to business development and so on and so forth. But now we try and be as punctual as possible, as specific as possible, and identify what would be the immediate need that needs to be addressed for this project really to move forward one step at a time towards the development to scale. And once we have done that, once we've accomplished that, and we aim to really do that rather shortly, we then continue our concerted discussions spanning EU and AU institutions and partners to define tailored support mechanisms accordingly. Of course, this will be done in the context of the EU innovation agenda. So somehow this is just the beginning of a long and ambitious journey, and I like to stress out the unprecedented ambition that is also now politically charged for the AU innovation agenda. It's just the beginning, but we're not starting from scratch. As you can see, this is the longest established partnership, and there's projects that have certain degree of maturity that deserve indeed further investment and support. and we aim really to roll up our sleeves and do our best to make this attainable and attained ultimately. So with that, I'll thank you all very much, and apologies if I took some extra time, and I'll be happy to take questions if there's any time allowing for those to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo. Indeed, it is time well spent and fast spent, as it were. We have almost come to the end, but we have just a few questions. Let's take two, and we should be able to finish in shortly. It is groundbreaking indeed that you are taking forward projects that started in this initiative, and that's a very good thing. But we do have a few questions here, and perhaps Yin could also respond to it, even as Vincenzo responds. Emmanuel Okalan asked that previous AU-EU research projects have not supported infrastructure development. Is it something that is going to be done in this new Africa innovation agenda? And then another question, Jacob, you are asking about the criteria. I believe it has been answered by the presentation, but there is another question about capacity development and training. Do you have capacity development and training in the program? I believe you'll be able to answer to that. Thank you. Those are two questions, quick questions, and then we conclude. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I think the infrastructure development, of course, is an important aspect, and it has it bothers us for a long time. And this is also one of the reasons why we try to partner now also with our internal colleagues, with our development cooperation partners, or the partners, the colleagues at the International Partnership DG, for the simple reason that with our research and innovation funds from a legal perspective, we cannot fund infrastructure development, or at least not specifically for countries, for example. So that is more the responsibility of the DG INPA colleagues. And I think we have already achieved quite a good understanding on both sides that this is needed. It's also reflected by the developments we had, or the outcome of the senior officials meeting of the high-level policy dialogue in 2019, where many African governments were mentioning that the brain drain of very good researchers from Africa to Europe is something that would bother them. But of course, it was also discussed that in order to keep the talent in Africa, you need to have and conducive environment, and then that of course includes infrastructure. So we hope that with getting out of our comfort zone and trying to promote the implementation of the innovation agenda across various DGs and involving them in the process of also drafting the innovation agenda, we hope that we can really make a difference, because we see that is really needed. And the same applies, of course, and I was saying that before, that applies to European Union and African Union member states. We all have to do our bit. And we hope with this agenda, which is very, very broad actually, that we can achieve that. Of course, again, it will be a step-by-step approach. We cannot change the world in just one finger snip. That would be nice, but it's not possible. So therefore, we need to have some patience, but we also we on the European Union side, we would rely very much on the stakeholders to give us appropriate feedback and to tell us exactly what they mean and what is needed in their view, and then we can continue the discussion where needed. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you very much. It does indeed answer part of the question. Vincenzo, do you want to say something?
Thank you very much, Dr. Florence, and thank you, Jens, for elaborating on the first part of it. Perhaps on the training. I'd like to say that, yes, very much so. And in fact, again, try and be as practical as possible. As Jens was mentioning, and also as Lukovi was mentioning in the process, of the ongoing public consultation, I take this opportunity also to reiterate the message. Please, stakeholders, everyone listening and tuning in today and now, please do take the survey. We're going to reshare the link that has been already kindly shared by our forum colleagues. Every view, every single opinion really matters and can make a difference. So within this context, what we aim to do, the public consultation is going to be open still for some time. It's currently open until May 13th, and we are finalizing a decision to really move it forward and extend the closing date until the end of June. So there's still time to contribute to that. What we're going to do afterwards is going to digest the input and feedback received through the consultation into our report. They will be, of course, publicly accessible, and then organize a stakeholder event in the second half towards the end of this year. And this stakeholder event not only will be a way to further consolidate the feedback and input received by several means in a plenary session or also in dedicated satellite workshop, but also will contain training opportunities there already from the stakeholder event. Training opportunities according to the 4 areas of priorities of the AU-EU partnership that were highlighted earlier on by my colleagues. So public health, food and nutrition security and sustainable agriculture, and climate change and sustainable energy within green transition, innovation and technology, and capacities for sciences, very much linked to, indeed, the capacity building and human development. I see Malet has kindly reshared the link to the public consultation. Thank you ever so much, Malet, and we take it from there. Over to you, Dr. Florence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. And I believe colleagues you have heard, please do contribute to that discourse, do contribute to the dialogue, do contribute to the agenda by responding to what has been put out. I see someone really wants to, a hand raised. I hadn't made provision for hands being raised. Who is raising their hand?
Lucy.
And sorry?
The hand is raised by Lucy.
Lucy? Okay. Okay. I haven't seen Lucy raising, maybe it was a mistake, but I acknowledge that Michelle Saz from DG INTPA is on the call and has been part of the discussion, but we want to conclude, and I'll give just one opportunity to Professor Jessica Nakavuma, who has put her hand up so that she can ask the question, and then we conclude. Mensa, please be ready to give a vote of thanks to our panelists and also the participants. Dr. Jessica, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry I joined late. I found Vincenzo presenting, but I thank him very much for taking us through how they carried out the evaluations of the various projects. But I appreciate most that we see light at the end of the tunnel, whereby we have our ideas going into commercialization or production to really serve our communities. I've not looked at the survey as yet, and I hope that at times those surveys are too obscure that you may even fail to give an answer. So I hope it is easier. I would like that fear to be allayed. But I thank the organizers of this webinar very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jessica Nakavuma. I think we will hold it at that. I take it, Vincenzo, that we shall have more projects beyond the ones that are already in the pipeline. I believe that is the case, even as we go forward with the innovation agenda. But for now, I think we'll cap it here. Unless 2 hands are up, and this is by consensus, that time is well spent and almost done. So I'll give Bebe one opportunity and in 1 minute.
Bebe, you are allowed to talk. Kindly unmute and and talk.
It was not intentional. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Sylvanas, could you please give a vote of thanks to the presenters and the participants?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Florence. I will probably silent motion. Thank you very much. It's interesting to see that even though we went beyond the time, we still have a lot of questions coming in. This is the proof that this information session is very timely. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Forum Secretariat, on behalf of Prof. Adipala, to thank you very much, panelists. I thank Mr. Jens for providing this important background information. And Dr. Vincenzo, thank you very much for making time and also providing this information. Mr. Seke is not with us right now, but we believe that Mrs. Mallet will convey our thanks to him and to our translator, Atim, Shokran, and Yamungu. Merci beaucoup pour le travail effectué. So with that being said, I don't want to take too much time. I thank you all, the participants. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. The link is still on and open. You are welcome to go to the website and provide your input. I thank you very much for this important session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mensa, for that vote of thanks. Just to remind colleagues that this has been recorded and it is on the YouTube channel. So if you want to revisit what has been said, you'll be able to find it, and it does have the interpretation as well. Thank you very much, as Mensa has said, and we see you as you respond to the survey and contribute